Thank you very much, Iman. Let me take the opportunity to extend my warm and sincere greetings to the Group CEO of Standard Bank. I nearly said Brasim, Mr. Simshawa. Thank you very much for the invitation. He's one of the mainstay of the South African energy calendar. This gathering is one not to be missed. So thank you very much for extending the invitation for me to come and join you and also learn and unlearn from the conversations that will be ensuing here. And also a special mention to the Group CEO of Eskom, Dr. Mteto Nyati. Thank you very much for making time. And let me greet you all in your eminence and good morning. I mean, the last time I was here I think it was the third iteration of this seminar. I think that's what we call it. We're in the throes of load shedding. I think last year we experienced the highest intensity of load shedding in the recorded history of Eskom, over 100 years of existence. And of course, we're able to articulate the implications of load shedding, its structural constraints on the South African economy, the kind of devastation that is afflicting on the lived experiences of ordinary people, businesses, and just the inability of the South African economy to experience the kind of growth that we were capable of achieving. And I had made the point on the podium that the men and women at Eskom are transfixed on the resolution of this problem. And I gave the country an assurance that being engineers, it's a discipline that draws from the exact science of physics, chemistry, and mathematics. And the exact science, by their very nature, they lend themselves to accurate quantitative expressions. And I had said that we have also determined what the problem statement is. And that problem statement was that gets the lights on. Of course, we've got a more sophisticated articulation of the problem statement. And I was saying that with the engineers at the helm, the minister, the chair, and the group CEO will resolve this problem. And that's why today we are here 6 months into it. There is no load shedding. So I'm just saying it's on account of the work that the team have been doing there at Eskom. I really want to congratulate the CEO, the group chair of Eskom for the excellent work. Let's keep at it. Once we get to a situation where I'm invited to a gathering and no one remembers the number of days without load shedding, then we have achieved. Once we get there, then we have achieved. I've prepared the presentation. I'll be very short, but I think the group CEO of Standard Bank does an excellent job in framing the conversation as he puts it. So he posits 3 propositions. And in fact, coincidentally, I expand on those propositions. So I'm very grateful that you have articulated that, Mr. Shabalala. So I think I'm going to just get into it and just explain. Just on the issues of context setting, so working on an integrated energy plan, and that has got, if you like, 3 levers. The first one is an integrated resource plan that has gone out for public comments. What the IRP does really, it's an articulation of the energy sources or fuel sources that are going to power the South African economy. It makes a number of assumptions, the kind of growth that we are expecting, the amount of consumption at the household level, and all of those things. So it computes what these energy sources are, and it also makes the point around what are the costs associated with the choices that we'll be making, so that at the end of the day, we are able to make determinations that are in the interest of the country. So we're busy with that IRP 24. We've taken out for public comment, and some of the critique that has come out from the public domain suggests that we have to do significant remodeling or rethinking of some of the assumptions, some of the modeling. So we've chosen to occasion an opportunity to allow those who have made written or substantive submissions to come into one room so that we can have a conversation around what are some of the underlying assumptions and the kind of modeling that we are using, so that there's some degree of convergence and consensus. So we're going to occasion that opportunity. So it's likely going to be a substantial remake of the IRP. And the other one is a liquefied fuel plan that is in the domain of Minister Mantashe. I'll leave that. And then the third one is on the gas master plan. On the gas master plan, I'll say one or two things about the situation in relation to gas, and also its a relationship to the kind of future that we desire. On the gas master plan, we think that there are fatal flaws. So fatal means that really you must not necessarily start from scratch, but a substantial review of the gas master plan. I think the issues of modeling, the issues of assumptions do not meet the test of science. So I think it's important that everything that we do, the policy framework, the policy formulation, must be evidence-based. I think the beauty about science is that it removes emotions, so we're able to have a genuine conversation around what the issues are. I did say that the nature of science, it lends itself to accurate quantitative expressions. Of course, science, I'm not talking, economics is not in that realm, it's something else. Yes. Well, the fact that you can say on the one hand and on the other, then there's a problem there. We know 1 + 1 is 2. There's no on the other. So that's the point I'm making. I know I'm not making a lot of friends, but that's not my intention. It's just to tell the truth as an engineer. But one of the issues that are going to receive attention there is the issues of energy security. The integrated energy plan must resolve those questions on energy security. Of course, it will have manifestations across all these levers. The energy security conversation is important. It has been elevated by the last COP. The last COP introduces a new phenomenon, a new, if you like, nomenclature in the language of climate change and the issues of development. They refer to something called the energy trilemma. So essentially, energy must resolve 3 issues. That's the first one is issues of energy security, the ability of sovereign nations to be able to meet their own domestic demands and also provide sufficient headspace for them to allow their economies to grow. Of course, it has become more pronounced in the light of the Russia-Ukraine war. So the developed Western countries found it appropriate to elevate the issue of energy security. Previously, it was relegated. Now it has been elevated. Of course, they have the biggest voice. What they say goes. Now it's part of that conversation. And the second anchor of that trilemma is the issues around energy access. And this is even more an attractive one for us, much closer to home. And when I say home in this instance, I'm talking sub-Saharan Africa. We are part of that. 600 million people don't have access to electricity. The point that the CEO was making earlier on, that the conversation around climate change must have a relationship with the lived experiences of our people. So we can gather here, if you like, as the elites, because that's who we are, and articulate and exercise agency on behalf of the poor and the marginalized. I think those people are not necessarily unthinking. They've got an ability to exercise their agency. They've got an appreciation of what they need, and they've got the ability to mount struggles in favor of their needs. So I think it's important that we are able to resolve the issues of energy access, and it's got 2 dimensions. The first one is the availability of that electricity. Of course, I'm narrowing that energy now into electricity, and we know that load shedding undermined our ability to ensure that we are able to meet the expectations of households and industry, because they were not able to get this electricity at the time that they needed it. And then as Iman makes the point, it's got new manifestations now. It has taken the form of what we call load reduction. So in the eyes of those who are experiencing load reduction, it's just the change of terminology. the experience is the same. There are specific hours in the day, in the morning and the evening where I don't have access to electricity. So call it what you want. Load shedding, load reduction, I just don't have electricity. And of course, if you understand the technical manifestations of that, it's downstream of the value chain, it's localized, and it's largely in poor areas as a result of issues of energy losses that are as a result of, if you like, leakage that happens there, what in township language we call it izinyoka, illegal connection. So the inability of municipalities to comprehend the size of growth and build the necessary infrastructure to accommodate the growth that I experience in largely dense metro areas. I mean, that's why it's more pronounced. So I'm saying that its availability and the second sub-element of energy access, remember, I'm on the third leg of that energy trilemma, is affordability. So it's becoming more pronounced. ESCOM, having done its own calculation, has gone to NEXA, which is our energy regulator, to say that we think that we are deserving of a 36% increase, tariff increase. And of course, they make a case why 36% tariff increase. We'll leave that to NERSA, but I think there could be a policy intervention that we can make to provide some degree of relief. I must still canvass it internally. I'm confident that we're going to succeed. So remember that you are balancing the following. You are balancing the need for ESCOM to be able to meet its obligation to keep the lights on, and on the other hand, you don't want to undermine the ability of the economy to grow, and the poor to be pushed back deeper into conditions of poverty. So we're experiencing energy poverty in the country, so you don't want to accentuate that. So you must find policy levers to cushion the poor. We'll make that announcement. I'm confident we'll find each other with regards to what is possible going into the future. So I'm just saying that is more pronounced, and that's to the point of the group CEO. It's important that this conversation takes that into account. But we know that if we increase the share of renewables as part of the mix, we are likely going to, in part, resolve the affordability question. Yesterday, we occasioned a platform where we were engaging with the renewable energy sector players, just trying to understand some of the challenges in the bid windows. The bid windows is a disciplined manner in which government goes out to procure renewable energy sources from private sector players. And we were able to learn that over a period of time, since bid window number one, if you like, the cost of PV has come down 85%, the cost of wind has come down 75%, PV 56 cents a kilowatt hour. So we know you must increase that mix, and then you'll be able to address the issues around affordability. And then the third leg on that trilemma is the issues around sustainability. And I guess that is a primary preoccupation of this conversation today. And I really am attracted to the second proposition that is propagated by the group CEO. He makes the point that, so don't make absolute statements. One of the difficulties in the conversation in the country is that you are binarizing the conversation. So it's either renewables or it's coal. So you are either white or black, there's nothing in between. And that's why the IRP talks of a mix. It's important that we have that conversation. The last time when I was here, when I made the point around our experiences and the learnings from Komati, I saw a big headline, Ramokgopa anti-renewables. Of course, I sympathize with the journalists, is exactly that, the journalists. It's a complex conversation. But the point I had made on the platform, no, and I'm saying this from a good place, not award-winning. I see it, just saying that's the point. That's the point I made. So I'm just saying that it's important that we are able to talk of a mix. So the problem in the country is that they are fundamentalists. So essentially a religious preoccupation with an energy source. So your attractiveness to that fuel source is such that you are not open to conversations about what is possible. And I really want to encourage that the conversation must be open to ideas on how we can resolve this problem going into the future. Science has illustrated that there's a correlation between fossil fuels, emissions of fossil fuels, and also the frequent occurrence of extreme weather conditions, what we refer to as climate change. We might not have established causality, but I'm just saying, at least at the minimum, we know that there's a correlation, and it devastating the poor at most. And then that's why we're talking of diversification of energy sources. I've spoken about the affordability, the issues of emissions, and I've made the point that we are committed to an exponential increase of renewables as part of the energy mix. Yesterday I said renewables must be on steroids. But for us to be able to ensure that the share increases, first we must understand what are the structural limitations of the previous bid windows. Resolve those, because there's 10,000 that cumulatively over a period remains unallocated. So let's understand what are the challenges there, and then resolve those challenges. And then when we talk about the next mega rolling bid window, we know we've resolved the structural challenges. I'm glad Dr. Professor Maxwelling is here. He's accepted the responsibility to be part of the National Transmission Company of South Africa. He's distinguished himself in the area of renewables. So they are making a contribution to the country just to resolve the transmission question. So we know that for us to aggressively onboard transmission, we need to expand by about 14,000 kilometers. It will cost us anything in the order of magnitude of, as a floor, about 390 billion rand. So we must find bespoke ways of how you are going to finance that. And that's why, I mean, the commercial banks, the development banks are going to be central in the resolution of that question. I hope you'll see opportunities, the group CEO. As you see the opportunity, you are helping us to resolve the problem of ensuring that we are expanding the transmission line. So we can meet all of your narrow interest. You want returns for your investors, and on the other side, you are helping us to resolve, it's a social good. We are resolving the energy question in the country. So I'm just saying it's the intersection of those points that is important, is that sweet spot. And that's why when we are assembled together and we talk more and more, you'll find that there's a lot more that we agree to than what divides us. And that's what is important. That's the point. That you don't have to agree with everything that I say. Just give yourself time to listen to me. I'll give myself time to listen to you. You'll find that you are going to find each other. That's the point I'm making. So then, and then maybe just to, and then there's some work that has been done. I see the PCC is there. Thanks, I nearly said comrade. My apologies, my apologies. We know when we have the mic and there are people in front of you, then you're conditioned to use other acronyms. That's fine. So what we have done is to understand what does it mean for us to achieve this just energy transition. So we went to some of the fora of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in 2021. And we made commitments ourselves. So we are not about to retreat from those commitments. I want to make the point. It is not because there are pressures from global powers. It is because it is in our interest. So that's the starting point. For us to safeguard the livelihoods of our people and posterity, we need to protect them against the issues of climate change. Coined this thing called the just energy transition. And the group CEO articulates an important point that as we have that conversation, we must also understand the socio-economic manifestations of these decisions that we are taking. We can do both. That's the point that I'm making. So we had said that in that context, our commitment is to say that we want to decarbonize the South African economy by anything between 350 to 420 million tons CO2 equivalent. And then we ask the question, what does it take for us to achieve that? So we then identified, if you like, priority sectors that requires intervention. And in the main, we said the electricity is key, and that's why it's important, the conversation about how ESCOM is going to ensure that it greens energy generation. It's an effect of life and engineering fact that these plants are aging, you are going to decommission them, but you must replace this energy that you are displacing with an equivalent source. When I say equivalent, I mean we understand the technical limitations of renewables, their non-dispatchable nature, their intermittent. But if you've got storage solution, then you are going to approximate conditions of base load. So electricity is an important EV, and then the green hydrogen is a new frontier. Conversations we are having, Iman makes a point, huge endowments that we have in the country. So we've got things that the West don't have. They have the money, but they don't have the following. First is the natural endowments. So the quality of the sun, the irradiation levels, if you had to do an irradiation atlas, one of the best in the whole world, especially in the Northern Cape, only matched by, I think, the last time I checked, the Australian outback and also Namibia. So we are fine, we're in good place. The second one is the amount of real estate. The amount of land that is unoccupied, that is not competing with other, if you like, commercial uses. So go to the Northern Cape, all you do, you just drive and drive and drive. There's no one inside. The sun is beaming. There's just land and land. Those are significant resources that we have. And then the third thing that we have that don't underestimate it, is just the technical capability that resides in this country. One of the most advanced. I make the point that the highest concentration of the most skilled engineers on the electricity side are found in Eskom. Anywhere in the world. Underline what I'm saying. I'm saying the highest concentration in one area or in one institution are found in Eskom. And I'm emphasizing anywhere in the world. So I think it's an appreciation we must have. On the green hydrogen, there's a technology called Fischer-Tropsch that Sasol has been using over time. It's unmatched. So it's PLS, what Sasol has been doing. So it's important that we acknowledge the abilities, or if you like, the resources that we have, and see how best we can exploit those. So once the team have done at the PCC, the Presidential Climate Change, and many other players, was also to compute how much it will take for us to be able to achieve that kind of ambition. And they say it's 1.5 trillion rand. I'm sure you know the size of the South African balance sheet. It has deteriorated over time. Eskom balance sheet is weak. If you had to just look at Eskom, you know the challenges that Sasol has been facing. So the commercial banks, the development finance institutions are going to be very key in helping us to resolve those. But that must be underpinned by this thing of ensuring that you protect vulnerable workers. So as you transition, you want to make sure that the net employment effect at the West is zero. At best is positive. And I'll show you what the numbers in other areas are. So this is what we are resolving. So there's a degree of science. We've computed what is required. Now we must look for this money to be able to help us. So we went out, the International Partners Group, a group of industrialized developed countries, have put before us a facility. I think the last time I checked, it was about 11.6 billion, and it keeps on increasing. There's more and more that are coming into that. And we've been able to quantify what are the requirements per sector. Remember I said there are priority sectors, and then also what underpins. The transversal nature of skills development is important. You must undergate the work that we are doing. This I'm trying to illustrate to you that there's a lot of thought process. So when the president makes these pronouncements, there's a lot of work that is being done behind the scenes. So we've computed, so we've arrived at these numbers. So it's important that we are able to tap into that facility. And I'm sure Standard Bank can also add into that facility. Of course, you look at your own interests, but the point is that we are resolving a bigger question. And I said 1.5 trillion rand is required for us to be able to transition. There has been investment that has been made over time. I mean, the issues of the bid windows, an illustration of what can be achieved. I mean, when this program was introduced around 2010, Silas 2011, it had no peer anywhere in the world. One of the most revered and celebrated programs. I did say that the bid windows is a disciplined way of government going out into the market to procure, if you like, renewable energy sources. And we have been able to perfect this over time. But there are significant shortcomings. I mean, just the period of time it takes for us to get to financial close, the challenges around the permitting and licensing. We had a conversation yesterday, so we understand where these bottlenecks are because we want to fast track this process. So you can see it could take you up to 18 months from conceptualizing a project and going into construction or completing construction, getting the electrons onto the grid. So we're trying to resolve this equation. So yesterday we were sitting with the players who were able to indicate rather what are the issues that undermine our ability. I mean, we want to truncate from a concept design RFP. We should have perfected that. We're on bid window, the last one was bid window number 7. We should be doing these things much, much better. And we have found that it's a disintegration in government. So we're going to pull all of the players together without necessarily going into the details. We want to make this, if you like, value chain shorter so that you are able to get the electrons on the grid as much as possible. So it's been phenomenal success. I mean, in relative terms, like I said, 9 bid windows. So we have about 7,335 megawatts operational. So some of the advances that we are seeing is on the back of this program that we have started. Of course, one of the things that we must do is to account for those green electrons. We know that the industry is facing an existential problem, questioning that the Western developed countries, the European Union in particular, they are going to introduce the carbon border adjustment mechanism. We are arguing that is a trade instrument. They argue differently. But that won't take us very far. What we see is that what they've introduced as a hurdle rate to access their market. So they're essentially saying we have an interest in understanding how these finished products were manufactured. If you use fossil fuels to manufacture them, then we are going to levy taxes on you, the carbon border adjustment mechanism, because they've got their own ambitions to meet, and they don't want the relocation of industry. Because they are stringent in their application, industry simply go to jurisdictions that are not stringent, and they still have access the benefit of those markets. So we understand where they're coming from. So what Eskom will be doing is to account for that 7,335 megawatts. I'm sure we can sell that for a premium to these entities, and they show that, no, I've manufactured this on the back of a green generation. And then we going to town to explain where some of these projects are. And then this is the point that the group CEO was making. I think it's important that as we drive this build program, we are able to embed in that the socio-economic elements. And that's why I'm saying the industrialized world, the language at the COP is a trilemma. I think in our country, there's a case to be made for a quadrilemma. So in addition to those three, there's an additional leg, the socio-economic impact, where I have a vested interest of ensuring that as we transition, we broaden the flow of manufacturing. The CEO makes the point, I mean, if you look at the battery economy, some of the minerals, cobalt, copper, lithium, rare earth elements, PGMs, you mentioned them. I mean, a majority of those are found in our country. So it's important that we are able to build an industry on the back of the battery economy, so that we are able to take account of the benefits that accrue as a result of this. And of course, this really at the global level, what this slide simply suggests is that PV and solar on the ascendancy. China accounts for 40% of new generation capacity on solar and PV, 1,006 gigawatts. Just to put it in context, this year, that's what China is doing on PV and solar. So they are building just the size of Eskom 24 times, just on PV and solar. But what they are also doing, they are building about 41 gigawatts of coal. What's the point I'm making? It's not to advocate for coal. They've appreciated that it's a mix. So it's important that you are able to power your own energy requirements. So that's the point I'm making, that we're talking of a mix, and you can see that there's been record growth due to solar and wind, which has reached a 12% share of global electricity mix. Of course, we as Sub-Saharan Africa account for 3.9%, 3.7% of the total global emissions. The country account for 1.3%. As a country, a third of what Sub-Saharan is is responsible for. And I think we've got an obligation, I want to argue, first to our own people, secondly to the region and the world, to ensure that we're able to lead by example and transition. And that's why the issues about the nationally determined contributions, our voluntary targets that we have set for ourselves, we have to do everything to meet those. That's the point I'm making. Of course, it might be the pace and scale, it's another conversation. So in the quest of doing that, let's not undermine what is required. And this is global employment trends in relation to renewables. So you can see that there's an exponential increase, almost a correlation of the share of, not necessarily a correlation, but there's a relationship between the increase in the share of solar and PV and also what the employment deriving from those sectors. So we want to come to the tip of the African continent. We want to add a significant number to that. And in that way, we're able to find the justice in the just. That's the point I'm making. And I'm sure the conversation can help us to fashion that. As I conclude, Iman makes the point, I've made the point, issues about load reduction. So you can see municipalities are facing significant headwinds. Collectively, they owe Eskom about 82 billion rands. If this trend is not managed, assuming a linear growth, by 2050, they will be owing Eskom 3.1 trillion rands. So it's important that we resolve that question because it's got implications on the ability of municipality to reinvest in the maintenance, refurbishment, of the distribution infrastructure, which is responsible for the kind of challenges that the municipalities are experiencing. And just also to admit that the distribution sector is going through major reforms. And I think that we can be able to embed artificial intelligence, we can modernize the distribution infrastructure. We are going to go into localized grids, polycentric development of energy generation. We are relying now on cleaner sources of technology. By the end of October, we are launching one pilot, 2 rural villages in Limpopo, where we were able to show, we went into a village, they have not seen electricity before. We're going to connect them 1 megawatt of storage, connect everyone. Everyone will have access to internet, one of the fastest, even better than parts of Sandton. So these are people who never had electricity a month ago. They will have electricity, and we are able to illustrate our numbers. The unit cost of delivering all of that, including public lighting, is going to about 27,000 per household. We have spent over 110 billion in universal access, but we've got nothing to show. There's still a number of communities that are outside this provision of electricity. So we don't have to think of being connected to the grid. So don't think of the municipal wires, the Eskom wires. We must just rethink, recalibrate how we think about energy access. And we're going to illustrate that, got that 5 billion allocation per annum. Our ambition is to say that by the end of the 7th administration, we are going to achieve universal access. I mean, that's how we want to be measured on. We will achieve universal access on cleaner forms of energy. And then we are able to account our share of how we are greening generation must increase in line with the fact that we contribute a third of sub-Saharan emissions. And then on the gas issues, we are hitting a gas cliff in the next 2 years. The resources in Panda Temani is running out. The gas contributes 700 billion rands per annum to the GDP, employs directly 110,000 people, indirectly about 500,000 people. The economy relies on that. 5% of our economy is powered by gas. So we are making an interim solution. We'll find LNG, land it in Mozambique, regasified through the Ramokgopa pipeline. It will get to Secunda, and then through the Lily pipeline goes to the south. I'm making this in the context of what are the sovereign needs, but also the fact that gas is a step down. And of course, we think we'll resolve this. So I really want to take the opportunity to thank you, wish you well. I am happy to be part of this conversation. Let's take counsel from what the group CEO has said. Let's open ourselves to criticism. Let's listen to others. He says there is a dialectical relationship. So it's not polemical. It's not you win, I win, you lose. Just an acceptance that there's a thesis and antithesis, and then we can synthesize those and get that right going forward. Thank you very much. Yeah.